So self-determination theory is basically the concept that regulation of behavior varies along a continuum from externally controlled to autonomous or intrinsically motivated interests. The theory emphasizes the importance of intrinsic motivation for producing healthy adjustments and asserts that negative outcomes ensue when people feel that they are driven mainly by external forces and extrinsic rewards. You can find that all in APA dictionary. So there are two sides. There are the extrinsic motivation and there's intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is basically this idea that you will be externally rewarded for any of your pursuits. This is like having a job, getting paid, getting a continuous paycheck for doing that said job. You're doing it for the money or for an external reward, and you can use that money for any number of things. That is proven to be significantly less potency and longevity when it comes to your determination. So it is better to have intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from this idea that you love what you're doing, you enjoy innately doing it, and there's no external reward attached to that but your own motivation to do it. But there are three basic needs in order for intrinsic motivation to exist. There's autonomy, there's relatedness, and there's competence. Now, those don't all necessarily need to exist in order for intrinsic motivation to exist, but it is very key in order for intrinsic motivation to factor in. So first of all, autonomy is the feeling that you have choice or control over your action. A great example is fitness. Like, I feel like I'll go with this because personally, I love fitness. It's amazing to me, and it's a great way to stay in shape and healthy. And a good way of doing that is if you're going by a program determined by either a trainer, an app, or whatever it is, you aren't creating your own autonomy. You aren't creating your own exercises that you know will work. And if you're going by a plan rather than just going to the gym and doing your own exercise, your experiments, and you're doing whatever you want, there's going to be a noticeable factor in your determination ultimately, because you are not the one choosing to do that thing. I mean, take having a job, for example. Like, if you're getting paid, that's cool, but you're getting told what to do. Like, that's why so many people, it's their dream job to be their own boss, because they have their own autonomy and they have their own control over their lives. Everybody loves control in their lives, and I feel like that's a very healthy thing to have. The next thing is competence. I would like to say I'm not very competent. I wish I was, but sucks to be me. But it's about feeling capable and effective. So you basically have to see results. Going back to the gym example, it would be like you see improvements in physically and aesthetically, I guess, to how you are training. And if you don't see those results, you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm getting nothing out of this, really. And there isn't really a point for me to be continuing this activity if there is no, it's hard to say, external reward, but it's more of linear improvement. It's more of a tracking of progress. If you can tell that you're getting better, you're going to stick to it. You're going to be like, oh, I can see myself that I can lift more than this other guy, or I can lift more than I did before. A great way of looking at that is looking at yourself yesterday. Like, I would feel a good method of measuring competency is measuring yourself from when you started, and that is ultimately how people become intrinsically motivated to do this thing, whether it's fitness, whether it's working, whether it's learning a new skill, whatever. The last method, which I feel is the hardest to attain, is relatedness. This is feeling connected and supported by others. And you might say, oh, that's awesome, that's cool. But the reason I think it's the hardest to incorporate into a self-determination theory and your intrinsic motivation is because it relies on others. It's outside your own ability. So I would say, you could say that autonomy and competence, you control your own routine, your own schedule. You can build that from the ground up. Your competence, you can gauge your improvement. You can strategically take a step back and visualize, okay, what am I doing wrong? What do I need in order to improve? Whereas in relatedness, there's really nothing in your control that you can do to get support or feel connected in a community. But you could put yourself out there, and I feel like that is something that is could be missed when looking at it this way. Like, being vulnerable is something I've talked about in the last video on the prospect theory, but there is a sense of in order to get support, you need to be vulnerable. You need to be able to express yourself in a mental, physical, whatever emotional fashion. And if you don't do that, then there's going to be realistically nobody that really is able to support you, because they don't know that you're doing this. They don't know what you're up to. And when considering self-determination theory, I mean, you want to not flex, but You want to express your identity by saying, I choose to do this, and I'm willing to show this to the world and other people that are around me in the community. And that's how you become attached to certain projects, certain niches, certain skill sets. And that's why people study degrees. That's why people go out and get these jobs and do these sports. And it's all a factor of community and what raises that and what supports that specific thing. Not all three of these theories need to exist in order for intrinsic motivation to exist. Like, you could have strong autonomy and strong competence, but like a significantly low amount of relatedness. And this is a factor of, well, I mean, going back to the workout example, you could be training by yourself. You could be going to the gym by yourself, not really posting pictures, not really gauging anybody else in the community. Or you could have your own home gym. This is a better example. If you go to your own home gym, you go to the gym, you pump iron for like 2 hours straight, and then you just stop and go in the mirror, see that you're making improvements both physically and aesthetically. It works. Like, you'd be like, oh, well, I do see a solid amount of improvement there, and I am willing to continue this activity. Whereas if you didn't have a specific structure that you wanted to follow, or a strict autonomy, or you didn't see the results, you would fall off. Because it's great to think about this like a stool. Like, there's 3 components to the stool. There's the front leg, the back leg, and the third leg. And these legs, I mean, you could have 2 really strong legs and 1 really weak leg, but I mean, the stool still stands up, and maybe it shifts a bit, but it's still there. But if you have like 2 shortened legs, but 1 really strong leg, the stool stands, but it's still like, you're not going to be balanced as much. But if you have like none of the legs, then there's going to be no real, like, the stool is going to completely weigh out base. And once you start it, and once you sit on it, it's not going to stay, and it's going to probably break down. And there's an idea in these 3 components to intrinsic motivation that you really do need, I think, at least 2 strongly correlated factors in order to make this work. Oh man, I need a glass of water. I'm talking a lot. When considering how this concept betters yourself, I mean, it's in there. I mean, you need structure, you need to see results, and then you need a community. You need support. And those 3 things, I feel, if you have those 3 things, then you're going to be more determined, that you're going to be more efficient at staying true to yourself and your whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to accomplish. But there's also the idea that maybe if you realize that you're not really intrinsically motivated, maybe just take a step back from whatever this activity is that you participate in and that you want to be determined at, and analyze which 3 of these components, or whichever of these components aren't working, and you should either reassess or re-strategize, I think. But I mean, when it comes to being determined at something, I mean, I feel like intrinsic motivation is extremely an important factor, because you can only get yourself so far with an external reward. There's nothing in life that is going to make you happy externally if you aren't happy with yourself and what you're doing and what you're accomplishing. But there is the idea that in society that you need to have these extrinsic rewards in order to sustain a proper life. And while that may be true, I don't think it can last as long as intrinsic motivation. But the broader idea is that intrinsic motivation outweighs extrinsic motivation to an extreme extent. And there's, I feel, no other way for you to stay true to both yourself and the activity that you participate in, whatever it may be, if you aren't intrinsically motivated. So when I do think assessing these 3 components is a very key aspect of trying to better yourself. So, yeah. But anyways, that's about it, guys. See ya.